item on the agenda is approving the minutes from July 27th. You should have all received the minutes.
Mhm.
So if I have a motion,
I can motion it
okay,
while I'm
thank
not
you.
muted. No problem.
Second the motion.
Terrific. Thank you. And then George Meservey has joined us tonight to, to sort of help us as we think about prioritizing projects for the coming year. Joan sent everyone, Joan and Carol worked on a great grid that went out to everyone with sort of what we know about projects in terms of new land requirement and usage groups. And then you should have also received a list of where people's rankings left us. So I guess maybe, George, if you don't mind kind of, I know you saw the rankings and saw some of our questions. Do you want to start us off with some basics and then we can follow up with questions?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Nice to see you all there. I hope some of your backgrounds are actually real. I assume that this is part of your preparation of a 5-year policy plan that you'll form with the recreation director and present to the selectmen. So I'm encouraged that you guys are doing a lot of work here, and I think it's going to lead to a nice long-term progression in recreation facilities and services. So I looked over your list of possible ideas. There are some really good things in here and some readily achievable goals you have. I think what I'd like to do, just as far as getting you oriented, is just kind of go through who controls what in properties. So once you know that, you know who you need approval from to bring a project forward. So let's start with Eldridge Park, because you had a proposal for pickleball courts there. Those are in Eldridge Park. Kind of goes along from the band shell straight through. All the tennis courts are part of the Eldridge Park property. Those are controlled by the Parks Commission, which is your Board of Selectmen, and you have a liaison to make a request through your board to the Parks Commission at the appropriate time. So if you want to do pickleball courts or convert something over that's on that property, you need the Board of Selectmen or the Parks Commission approval. You also had a proposal to turn some parking space into basketball courts. I assume those are asphalt basketball courts. Those are owned and controlled. Those are under the control and jurisdiction of the Nauset School District. So if you want that permission, believe me, I've been through many of these processes. It gets difficult to see who controls what. If you want to do anything on the school property, you need to go through the Nauset Regional School Committee for approval. You could probably start with the superintendent's office with a request to meet with them. The superintendent will probably vet any project that you have and consider whether it works with or is consistent with the school use first. I do want to say that I got your list of items shortly before I saw a plan that's being brought to the for the school district to put a canopy solar array over the entire middle school parking lot. That's the area behind the band shell, not the parking lot adjacent to the school building itself. So this is about a 60,000 square foot canopy array. I've only seen one of these. There's one at UMass Amherst I was under, and they seem like they're reasonable structures. Seems fairly substantial for an Orleans project, but I just say that to say it probably is not realistic to put anything, any kind of recreation facility on that asphalt, kind of the main parking lot where the buses park, that big rectangle. Kind of moving on here, just as getting oriented, if you want to do kayak racks, if you want to do them on a town landing, then you're advisory to the Board of Selectmen, but there's nothing to prevent you from soliciting comments from the Shellfish and Waterways Committee, who would have an influence on what happens at the town landings. And what may sound like a no-brainer to put kayak racks up, to people who are using the water every day, they're thinking about how much pressure there is on shoreside facilities, AKA parking and bike racks. And they may be reluctant to make it easier for more users to use the water. I mean, I know MEF has had this near and dear to his heart, and there are some issues that go along with it. So if it's not a town landing, if it's a piece of conservation property, any improvements to conservation require the Conservation Commission's approval. When land is purchased by the town meeting and put into conservation, it is solely controlled and managed by the Conservation Commission. They do have management plans for all their properties. And I would think that passive uses, bike racks certainly, maybe kayak racks, could be deemed consistent with the conservation use. We would hope they were, because they certainly serve a community benefit. So I'm going to move on to bike paths and bikeways. This is something we've worked on and run into roadblocks in the past, because if you're talking about a town laid out road, town roads are under the control of the Orleans Board of Selectmen because they are town property. So as an advisory committee, you could make a request to start planning for a bike path, bikeway on a town laid out road. But if it's not a laid out road, there may be public rights to use the road, but the town does not have the right to use anything beyond the paved surface. So for instance, Rock Harbor Road is narrow and windy, and people bicycle there, and it'd be great to have a 3-foot lane on one side or both sides of the road. We can't do it. We would have to take an easement or a piece of property from the pavement edge outward in order to do that. So there kind of is a reason sometimes why things that are inherently seem unsafe to us or could be improved haven't been done already. Doesn't mean they couldn't be done in the past, but there's a political effort to get it done. See, what else did you have here? You had the upgrade the running track. That's a school district issue that is in the Nauset school property. Anything related to a community center, I think is a select board request to initiate any kinds of feasibility study. I'm told there may have been a feasibility study request that was on the Maytown meeting that was canceled. I'm not sure. I didn't actually see that one. And the last thing I want to comment on for you is pocket parks. We actually have a comprehensive plan recommendation to try to install pocket parks in various parts of the town. The question is where is there a piece of town property? I assume none of you are considering that the town should be purchasing building lots for pocket parks, because that becomes expensive very quickly, as we all know. So, the question is how big, who is served, and where can you find a bit of space that's reasonably safe from actual road use so you can use it for a pocket park. So I think with that, I'd be glad to kind of cede the floor and hear your comments and see any questions you have. I'd be glad to try to answer on specifics.
Hi, George, it's Joan. You know that parking lot that's across from the police station?
Yes.
Okay, who owns that parking lot? It's not paved, it's like dirt.
That's part of Eldridge Park. That's on the parcel of Eldridge Park.
All right, so that's the town then.
That's controlled by the park commissioners.
Park commissioners,
Selectmen
right.
serve
Okay,
as the park commissioners.
Great, thanks.
And there does seem to be perhaps some edges of superfluous space in there that might be used for something more active and away from the roadway.
So George, can I just clarify then, the school is everything from the parking lot and the playing fields? Like if you're—
Why don't I send somebody on the committee, who's the committee chair, or maybe Tracy, are you the chair? Let me send you the parcel map with the brand new ortho photos that we just got today that show all the actual improvements with the parcel lines on there. Then you can see where the lines are. They're not necessarily akin to where the different uses begin and end. They just kind of are there in space. So I'll send you that.
Okay, thank you.
George, Kyle Wibby.
Hey, Kyle.
Hi. So the spot where the police station was temporarily housed while the building of the new station was, and where the old sticker office was, is that town-owned property? Is that being currently used or set aside for other uses?
That is a piece of town property. It doesn't have much active use. The building itself, the old American Legion Hall, is being used for a couple minor things. I think our IT people work out of there. Be aware that under there in the gravel area, there's a leach field for the town hall facility and for the American Legion Hall. So there's a limit on what could be done there. But certainly the location where the police department temporary quarters were, it's free and clear. It's a piece of general municipal property. It was purchased for $398,000 by the town in around 2002. I don't think the town is looking to dispose of the property. They have granted small pieces of it to the Historical Society to help the meeting house expansion occur. But other than that piece of property has not been designated for any other active use to my knowledge.
George, I have a question about, I guess, a long-range vision. And in this case, it would be connecting parts of the town by bike and pedestrian paths that currently are isolated. And the question is, how do you go about it? So here's, if you look at the underground mall and the affordable housing really above that, if there were a bike path such as the state did as they completed the bike paths and went over the highways in various parts throughout, what would be the process of getting the state to think about connecting by pedestrian and bike path from that area across to the other side?
Sort of, yeah, connecting that part to the center of town.
Right.
So, well, the interchange where Route 6 and 6A cross is a federal highway interchange. So the area there, you may notice now, there's almost no curb cuts there. There's no access to private property for about a 600-foot stretch. So that's a prohibition that's probably not easily lifted. You know, the FW Webb, before they went by the wayside, they probably would have loved to have a curb cut right under 6A, but they could not even apply for one because of that. So there's a limitation there. The alternative in that particular location was to try to extend a bikeway down Bay Ridge Lane and then out behind the electrical supply across the radio tower property to the bike path. The radio tower property is owned by a radio station. They probably would be willing to grant some kind of easement for the right price because it'd be generating revenue. So that, you know, those are the kind of things that we were looking at. For some reason, that just never really seemed to serve enough people that it had the political will to go forward. You know, one of the reasons why the Housing Trust decided not to pursue the underground mall is because there is no access to the rest of town from that side of the highway. I think the things I do, I look for the cart paths where people are obviously walking on a regular basis along the side of the road and say, those are the places where we need sidewalks first. I appreciate your comment about an overall connectivity plan for the town. But I kind of feel like we can't get off the dime on certain you know, major network connections such as Beach Road and Rock Harbor Road to make them bike safe, and to add sidewalks in a couple of key places like Main Street here. That doesn't preclude developing an overall bike and pedestrian plan, but it doesn't seem like it would be effective if we can't get over, you know, deal with certain small projects first, or that seem very important.
But so for instance, because things are up high there, a bridge over the highway, over 6A. Is that 6A?
Mhm.
That would have to be a state project.
Anything within the state right-of-way would have to be a state project. And when the state takes land for highway purposes, there's restrictions on other uses. So we would have to go through Mass DOT, through the District 5 office in Taunton, who would kick it up to Boston, who would consult with people at the federal highway level to see if the use, the change is acceptable to them. I won't say it can't be done, but it would seem to be you need a project that have high importance, just because of the long lead time and the amount of effort it would take to do it. For instance, in part of the interchange, we have had Mass DOT agree to allow us, town of Orleans, to use that as an alternative disposal site for wastewater in the future. That took about 4 years to get that approval, and that was with the governor's office, only with the governor's office citing, encouraging his department to do so. So I think that's about as much as I can say on that particular issue.
Tracy, can I ask George a question? George, there was a discussion at the select board a while ago about that connection of Bay Ridge into the bike path. And I think there was consensus that that was a good idea, but the answer back was, yes, let's do that, but we can't really talk about it until the treatment plant is completely finished and you get an idea of where exactly you might be able to cut a path through to connect into the bike path. So that's not I think, in terms of connectivity, pursuing that idea, I think, is valid. And that gets the Baker's Pond people into town, with the major impediment being just the intersection there.
Mhm.
But once they get through that, they can get all the way into town without taking their lives in their hands.
So I just want you to be aware that the Bike and Pedestrian Committee is working on, with the Cape Cod Commission, on a what we call a complete streets priorities plan. We got this funded through the state, and when we have our priorities plan done, the town will be eligible to apply for grants of up to $400,000 for actual construction. We're pretty excited about this. It means the state is committed to complete streets. So keep that in your mind, that I'm going to check later to make sure that this connection is listed in their, oh my gosh, they've got 60 different projects there on the priorities plan. The important thing is, if you think it's something we might want, let's get it in the priorities plan so it will be eligible for funding in the future.
George, I could put it on the priorities plan because I'm on the bike committee also. I'll check for you.
Thank you, Joan. Just crossed off my list.
Okay, well.
Hi, George. My name is Evan Legassi. You mentioned about a solar project on the parking lot by the middle school where the buses are parked. Could you explain a little bit more about what that project is all about, what the timeline is, and who's running that project?
I have been approached by a solar vendor who said they're working on behalf of the school district to put up this canopy array above the parking lots. The parking lot's still usable. They sent me preliminary plans that basically just showed me the location of the array and the electrical interconnect into the grid, so I know where those are. This project will have to go through site plan review and probably require additional permitting, certainly building permits with engineered construction documents. It has not been formally proposed to the town yet, but they expect to file a site plan, and I'm told they are filing on behalf of the school district. Since I just got these plans, I haven't checked out anything, and I won't unless I get an application. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much for the info. I appreciate that.
Sure.
George, just this is the first I'm hearing about that, and um, the use of that parking lot wouldn't change, right? Everything that is done there today would still be able to happen under that canopy.
I assume the canopy is going to be high enough so the buses can still get under there. And they'll probably last longer if they're out of the weather. The array is intended to offset the, you know, the electricity used by the school district. So it's that's my understanding of this at this preliminary level.
George, going back to that Eldridge Park area, if there are other projects happening, does that make that area potentially a good place for us to focus our energy? Is your sense from seeing things go through the process that areas where there's a lot of other activity, big projects happening, like Central Hub, should we be focusing on, or should we be looking to places that aren't?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is every idea you've come up with and will come up with is probably a good idea until there's a neighbor. So I would focus on areas that are already established for some kind of recreational use and enhance them. You know, scattering facilities might be a good idea in a larger community. This is a fairly small town. You can pretty much be anywhere in town in 5 to 7 minutes when the traffic's light. And I just think there's a lot less resistance when you have an established use than you're trying to start something new. I mean, we brought to the public a walking path along Town Cove about 7 or 8 years ago that would go from the windmill up by Stop and Shop, connect all the way down to Cove Road. It's a lovely idea, but the concerns expressed by residents along there, aside from the property takings values, just their concerns about people who would be walking there, and crime and other events that don't need to be mentioned. It just wasn't going to go anywhere. So I quickly realized that, you know, most planning ideas are out there. Finding the things that you can get done that are important enough to force through. And, you know, we don't make enemies when we plan, because we're going to have to plan with everybody in town. It's a small town. I just found from that process that an idea sounds great when we're talking about it in a committee, but when it goes out to the public, it's a different matter. So just be aware of that. I'm sure you guys have all had that experience in one way or another.
Any other questions before we, Meth?
I'll just give you an example on that road layout issue. The DPW is going to be doing Quonset Road in the fall. It's a complete, I think, repaving, and that is a laid out road. So we asked them the other night, or maybe it was at the pedestrian and the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, about just, since it's a laid out road, going ahead and widening it to the point where you can create travel lanes for bikes and pedestrians. And I got, you know, that complicated answer back, which is, yes, that's a good idea. It needs a lot of advanced timing and a fair amount of money, because it has to, even though it's a laid out road, engineering has to be in and you know, show exactly where the boundaries of that 40-foot way are, and where exactly you'd be putting you know, these paths, and also, you know, what's going to be in the way, telephone poles in the way, and other things. So I think that effort, trying to get the DPW with a mindset that widening should be the first thing they think about when they get to a road. It's too late for Quonset at this, you know, on this go around, but that, you know, finding some sort of a schedule and looking out and seeing what might be 2 years out or 3 years out, and, you know, and then getting involved with finding some money for the engineering That I think is the approach.
Other questions? Can move on and thank George.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That was really
Thanks, George.
Thank you, George.
Glad to participate. If you have any questions about particular locations, just send me an email. It's a really good way to communicate. And
Okay.
I'd be glad to help the committee in any way I can. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Nice talking with you all.
Nice
Thanks.
talking with you. Okay, I think let's just spend a few minutes looking at the priorities that we came up with. Maybe things have shifted. Joan, did you want to kind of talk about where the priorities fell?
Yeah, so Carol and I put together that big Excel, which was great. And, it was just a stab of everyone's ideas and what they sent in. And then, we sent the email just asking people to rank top 5. We could have ranked top 10. It was just to give us a sense of where we're at. I think pretty clearly bike paths with lights and pickleball courts were the top 2 things that, of everyone on everyone's list that came through. This is excluding community center and town pool, because those are big projects and Kyle's already working on the community center. And just to reiterate what Ann said last time, recreational funds for CPC have to be outdoor recreation. So no contained building. So an indoor pool or a community center would not be funded at all from CPC funds. So, still great ideas, still something we're going to pursue, but not part of trying to get our ducks in a row to apply for the CPC funds that are available. After the basketball court with lights and the pickleball courts, bike paths were big, and there is a complete streets, and I did send that to everyone. There are some bike path improvements that could be put through the CPC funds. And then at the last bike committee meeting, we were told we should actually go after one big project, like a $400,000 spend versus some small ones, using the state funds, which seems to make sense. And there was a lot that ranked to the top. There were also a lot of projects that were 2.6 million, really big, which we have to decide what to do with that. The rest of them, 2 people, 1 person, but, there seems to be a lot of interest to focus on a lot of things, which I don't think is wrong. And, we could focus on it until after the next input session, potentially, just keep working forward until we hear back from what the community says. That would be sort of my recommendation, but.
Thank you. One thing, I don't kayak, so would need a little help on this, but Morgan, who wasn't able to make the meeting, did email and said that she has a little bit of concern about the management involved with kayak racks, that they can be like moorings with wait lists and fees and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I'm not clear on if that would be our responsibility or fall under yours.
What we would have to do in every single one of these projects is put down what the town is going to have to fund or take care of in terms of their ongoing workload.
Right.
So for the kayak racks, Brewster just installed some kayak racks, and I don't know how much it's costing their town to upkeep them. But if you look around the landings now, and we were just over by Mill Pond, there's about 15 kayaks there, and about 8 of them have big orange stickers on them that tell, let's say you're not allowed to keep your kayak here. So people are putting them there. So is there a way to, make it legit? I don't know,
Eastham has a very straightforward system that comes out of the Natural Resources Office. And the same time they send out their sticker application form, they also ask if you want to pay for using a kayak rack. I've forgotten how much it is, but there is some administrative work and costs for the town. Generally, that's how those towns do it. In Brewster, I was just at Paynes Creek. They have 60 kayaks in their racks. They're numbered, looks very organized and very used.
So Dan, what kind of location are the racks in? Is it other than a landing?
Well, and the Paynes Creek is Bay Beach, so it's along the beach. Kind of thing that could go down at Wildflower, the extension of Skakit, for instance. And the ones in Eastham at Great Pond, for instance, they have room. Our landings aren't as extensive, although over at, there's some little stretch of upland land over at Crystal that could be used, and also at Pilgrim. So there looks like there's space that would be, wouldn't interfere with current use
Or parking?
or parking, which is the other key.
Right.
Tracy, I can, on this subject, I think New Orleans has probably already got the distinction of being the last town on Cape Cod with no kayak racks. And it's really a problem with the, I think in the Shellfish and Waterways Committee, because it is a competition with the mooring holders and the motorboats for what's perceived to be parking needs. And of course, that is the mooring management has kind of painted itself into a corner with tying new moorings or limiting new moorings based on lack of parking. And I don't agree with that, but I think that the conversation about kayak racks for you needs to include probably Nate Sears. He would be the one who would have to administer the program.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And but the enthusiasm, and right now, the Shellfish and Waterways Committee is the one that's in charge of whether or not there are bike racks. I think that transferring that out to recreation might be a great, way to resolve this conflict. But for now, I think the moorings are sort of more important to them than the kayak racks.
That brings up, I think kayak racks are part of the whole environmental justice argument, allowing people who to use Pleasant Bay, the ponds, the bay, and the parking has been a conversation partly because there is no solution, so it goes around and around and around. I'm hoping that there is a creative solution, like summer parking in under the canopy at the middle school with shuttling, kind of like the mooring guys park and go down to the beach, that there would be a way to, and in a way, the bike racks and the kayak racks go together. If your kayak is there, you can bike over and use them and not use parking. It's a great way of freeing up the parking space and allowing people. And I think the moorings, which I think you agree too, is that shouldn't limit the moorings by parking. Let people figure it out, and maybe there'd be an entrepreneur who would shuttle people around or use one of those little bicycle carts to get people down to where they want to be.
If I could just throw in maybe a random thought or idea, but maybe looking at alternatives to using the town landings with the boat ramps. If we could look at maybe partnering with the Orleans Conservation Commission, or whoever maintains a lot of the trails that go out to like the woods on the cove, or maybe even looking at spaces like the window to Town Cove or the meadow at Town Cove that have these little used parking spots, but access potentially down to the water, to kind of lessen the combat we would have to look at for the parking at Town Landing kind of issues.
Yeah.
See if there's alternatives to getting to the water that, maybe there's a spot at Kent's Point down by the handicap parking spot that could be utilized to put in some kayak racks and give access to Pleasant Bay. So maybe just kind of thinking outside the traditional box of
Great.
town landings with ramps and thinking of what partnerships we can find there.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So what our next step then, as far if we can kind of stick to kayaks for a minute, would be to come up with a proposal and talk to Nate Sears and get a sense from him.
I mean, just to throw my 2 cents in, I think we would want to talk with Nate Sears because we got to kind of iron out some of those details of how it's going to be managed and who's
Right.
going to manage it. I think it's worth trying to explore the, alternative placements or creative placements for the racks, whether that's talking to, whatever committee or organization that we can touch base with. But Nate Sears, I think, is a great starting point.
Because either way, we'll need his, assistance in the management. We'll need his input before we move forward.
It's almost as though you would sit with a map and
Right.
identify the players who had, that's a great idea to look at alternative sites. Kind of pair, I like the idea of pairing bike racks with kayak racks too.
I'm at Crystal Lake a lot and I only walk and there's almost no place for bikes. They're just piled up on top of each other. Now they shouldn't ride there because there's no bike path, but
Yeah.
but bike racks would take the pressure off the really horrible parking situation. And that'd be a really nice low hanging fruit one. And then it gets right into kayaks. So
I think, Tracy, you're going to want someone to sort of own the project of kayaks.
So are we thinking we would fund but not own? Or are you thinking?
No, kayak racks, I think we would pursue, but MEF would have to tell us how to do that, since right now it seems like the kayak racks are not under REC's jurisdiction, MEF.
They are under the Shellfish and Waterways Committee, not because I think that was in their initial charge, because I don't think anybody even thought about kayaks and canoes when, or paddle boards. There's another, that's another group of users. Those sort of things weren't really around when that committee started working, but technically right now, I think that they are the ones that the select board would be waiting to hear from. But I personally, if the recreation committee wanted to just even claim it, it would have my support, because it's as much recreation as anything else.
Would that be an occasion? Kyle was talking with us about changing our charge, and would that be something we would put in our charge? And it needs the Board of Selectmen approval?
This is the first I've heard of that, but I wouldn't be opposed to that. You'd probably want to have some sort of a broader statement about, water recreation, not just try to talk about kayaks and canoes, because swimmers even. Where do people go to really be able to swim these days? So. But it's all recreation, and it's the only reason it's with Shellfish and Waterways is because the town landings are such a burdened resource.
For the other towns that have kayak racks, are they strictly reserved for people to store their personal kayaks, or are there some town provided kayaks and life vests and equipment like that?
As far as I know, it's all for personal. It's kind of like a little mooring, and people pay whatever the annual fee is and have it for a year. And there may very well even be waiting lists that generate there. So, one of the questions could be that, one of the, mooring problems is that there's a whole bunch of people with moorings that don't live in Orleans, don't have property in Orleans, but have moorings from, days gone by. Maybe the kayak racks should be limited to residents, at least to begin with, so that you don't have residents waiting behind people from Chatham who got there first.
Right, right. The interesting, you should bring up that the town provides, or group, during the Simpson Island discussion, Mon Cochran was excited about the idea that there be a kind of service where there would be kayaks with the accoutrements, and maybe even like, in cities where there's a bike stand and you have a little credit card deal that you rent them, or you maybe do something, just sign up. I came across in the community preservation website, there is a town in Massachusetts where the kayaks are reserved through the library, and you go and you get assigned a kayak and told whatever the combination is, and go use it, which seems like a wonderful idea.
Another little sort of sensitive point is that there are private businesses in town that are in the business of renting kayaks. And I think the town has usually tried not to compete with businesses in town.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing that background. I appreciate it.
Other projects that people want to discuss further? Oh, Joan.
I know I would be willing to take on looking at the bike racks and the bike paths, since I'm on both committees and I've got a passion for those. I do think you already wrote up the pickleball court, so I think it's just revisiting that. But I do think we need someone to own the basketball court idea, since that really ranks high everywhere. And I don't know who wants to be a lead on that.
I'm learning as I go, but I'm happy to lead and would happily accept companionship in that role. But I have very devoted basketball fans in my house who I think would, it's been a long 6 months together. This might restore their love for their mother after 6 months of just being together all the time. As they move into adolescence, I've got to up my game. Maybe working on a basketball court would help. So I'm happy, and I think that that location that we discussed across from the police station is a really wonderful central, for both elementary and middle school. And that's such that whole area with the Firebirds games is such a good hub, is such a great hub. You could see people playing during games and kids playing. And I think that I would be happy to take that on.
Since the Firebirds are busy helping the town fix the lights, maybe they could have a light that turned over and shone on the new basketball courts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be happy to help Tracy with that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, well, Sharon, you're in the same position.
Yes.
I could also just say, from having some minor involvement with the skate park, the lighting situation is not as expensive as we might think it is, or difficult to get in place. And if there's any questions Erica O'Reilly, if anyone knows who she is. She's a
Yes,
great
I know
resource.
Erica.
I'm happy to take the lead on the kayak racks. If that is a topic.
Okay, so I think 3 is always feels like a good, a nice place, not too many, but not too few. If that feels like a good place for people to start as far as priorities as we head into, the 2021 year. Joan, were you?
I think there's 2 other things. The trail markers for conservation land, I think is an easy idea, and the OCT is interested in it. And that did come across it was called out different ways. The library is interested in helping on the storybook idea that Morgan had submitted. So we have someone else that could potentially work on that.
Okay.
But I would just ask if there was someone interested in working with the OCT on marking the trails better and having the educational or inspirational markings on them, because I think that's an easy win also, and we can have some good partnerships, some willing participants.
Joan, are you talking about the OCT or the CONSCOM?
Both, but all those trails that really need some nice markers and some educational things, they're both interested, and so it would be a nice project for us to partner on to get it done with the CPC funds.
Joan, has OCT made any sort of CPC asks for some of those items, or is this just something that they're recently talking about?
We talked to Steve O'Grady, and he was very interested in partnering on it. And he actually is very interested in having bike racks at the beginning of the OCT trails. So, working together would be great. And he's willing to put in some time and legwork on it also. So if we did it in partnership, it would be, a nice win.
I mean, I'm more than happy to, step up if it's needed. I think I use a lot of the OCT trails throughout the town, with my kids or just running or whatever. If they're needing some assistance, I don't know what I could provide, but I'm more than happy to reach out and, offer them whatever they need.
Great.
Joan, I was at a meeting of the CPC last fall or something. It was pre-COVID, and if I'm remembering right, the Conservation Commission, not OCT, the Conservation came in and was proposing signage, consistent signage. I don't think it was trail markers, which is I think what you're talking about. It was more the name of the area and maybe what the rules are for the area, looking consistent everywhere. Am I right that that's 2 different things?
I'm not sure what was done, or I don't think that they're consistent trail markers now. Are they in the OCT?
There's
No, there aren't. No, but this was definitely proposed by Brink. I forget his.
If I could just say, the OCT got CPC money a year or 2 ago for, I think, 6 signs at the trailheads.
Right.
And those are in. So I think
okay.
OCT is ahead of the town on
Yeah,
this.
this was-
And the application that Carol's talking about was from the CONSCOM, from the town,
Correct.
or the town-owned properties.
Right.
And it was one of the ones that didn't make it. They weren't entirely well organized and thought out yet, but I expect them to be back this year, and I think there was support for it.
Okay.
But tying that into something like you're doing, I think it's a natural connection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So let's plan on, all right, I need a little help. Do we need a motion to send those different people out to pursue those projects?
I don't
And,
think
you
so.
know?
No,
Okay.
nope.
All right, so we'll send people out to pursue projects and then report back at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Survey.
I have,
Oh,
I just have one question. So are we not doing any of the pickleball courts?
I
Because that
think
was
the
already,
pickleball is already written, so
right,
that's, doesn't,
okay.
does Alan have that, or it needs to be
I'm
updated?
not sure.
So what I would just suggest, I authored it last year. It just didn't get signed and submitted in time. If
Okay.
we just make a motion to update it with current information and submit it on behalf of Recreation Advisory Committee,
Okay,
I think we could do that. And I'll just make the motion, I guess. I move that the committee update and resubmit the pickleball court CPC application for this year's round.
I second that emotion.
okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
I,
okay.
Can I just ask how many pickleball courts and where?
I think it was,
Matt, we were looking at taking the lowest tennis court closest to the park, the playground, and converting it to, I think, did we come to 2 or 4 pickleball courts? I can't remember off the exact top of my head.
yeah,
It's in the application that we drafted last year.
I think the thinking was it was just, not just, I'm not the one who's gonna have to do it, but it was a matter of redrawing the lines, that the, you know, the courts were already there, so it would be a fairly easy project.
Before we move on to the next topic, Kyle, had you looked into the track situation previously, or someone else on the committee? What was the status of that, trying to rubberize the track?
So I've had conversations with Tom Conrad at the school administration office, who had kind of just said, hey, have you thought about doing something like this? And I've heard interest. I don't know that we've gotten around to numbers, but Tom was more than willing to provide information as to what they did at the high school and what he thinks it might cost or things like that to try to get that off the ground.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I had that as my number one. I know it wasn't widely supported across the committee, but I'd definitely be willing to reach out to Mr. Conrad and just start asking some questions, because in the vein of what George was saying about improving what's already there, it just seems like we can do so much better than a gravel track for the middle schoolers and for those of us adults who like to walk and run and be outdoors.
Thank you, Evan, that's great.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Okay, moving on then. Survey distribution. I know, Kyle and Ann, you have the, you know, a write-up with the survey and the results ready to go. But I just wanted to get an update for the committee on where that stands, and then talk a little bit about the community meeting that we discussed. So when we last were in touch, it was a matter of distribution of the survey results.
Yeah, I think that Tracy, you had made a good observation in terms of trying to almost, I guess, put it as like a Facebook post, because it's a little bit better to, you know, look at and distribute. We had written up, I think, a decent little one pager with some of the stats, and then wanted to include the full PowerPoint as a PDF form. And so I think that's where we stalled, was just trying to figure out how to distribute it.
Right.
And wherever we need to send it, I think it's pretty much ready to go. It's got all the edits done, and maybe just some slight formatting that needs to change.
Okay. I do want, so if we could get it into a JPEG or something like that where we could post it. The other thing that I think is worth looking into, the other thing I think is worth looking into, and we can talk to Alan when he is at the next meeting, is about using that rec website as more of a communication platform. That would be a great place if we could post a link and say that the survey results are up. Right. And people go to that website and can look through everything. So that's, I don't, I know that that website is still pretty new for Alan, but it would be good to find out what he's able to do, what modifications he's able to make, and how much flexibility there is, because that would be a great place for us to be able to communicate with people, and just a good resource. Okay.
A question I have, given that we haven't sent it around yet, could we today choose a time for our Zoom meeting and add it, rather than our statement was stay tuned for that announcement?
That's a great idea. Thoughts on appropriate dates, or what would be good times?
I know the bike committee is going to have something in October to try to get more input on complete streets, because they're sort of in the same bucket. They did the first thing, they're supposed to get a second one going, and they're going to try to do something Zoom wise, I think beginning of October. So I don't know when you're thinking the rec stuff should be, but that's what they were shooting for. And you probably get some of the same respondents.
Right. It's hard because this is going to be such a different fall from what, it's hard to anticipate interest levels and where they'll be, because everything is a little off.
Should we aim for weekend or weekday?
Oh, Carol, can you unmute?
Say what's best for working folks with young kids. And then, the people who are not necessarily voting residents usually leave after, leave it November 1 or something like that. So that it would be maybe a secondary consideration. But I think it should be parents with young kids, and working people should be the reason we pick the time.
I think you guys got such a great response to your first survey by using the email list. I'm just wondering whether or not that's might be another way to go. Just use the email list and see if we could set up some dates. And I don't know if it's realistic, but at the town meeting, could we hand the surveys out to people who go into the town meeting?
I think all of it is good. Every avenue we can pull off reasonably is good. And the question is, are you saying that we also have a Zoom meeting? Right.
Right, but in terms of distribution.
Right. Sending, I think what Kyle's put together can also be in an email blast, but being on social media and on the rec would be great, and handing out at the meeting would be good too, if we're allowed.
Does the end of September sound too soon?
I don't think so.
I'm just thinking,
Good.
I know most years that's open houses for schools, but everything will be pushed back. So as far as families, the end of September might be a good time. And it will be before we get into town meeting and in the bike and pathways.
I know Alan's not here, but I wonder if he has anything scheduled to go out about what's going to happen with rec in the fall.
And that would be a great place to pitch this.
Right.
Well,
Can I just, sorry,
Yes.
just one clarifying question. So are we talking about doing like a Zoom kind of input session?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thanks.
So so the idea would be that the survey results would be distributed, give people a little time, and then give people an opportunity to give us feedback on, so sort of the third step in the process.
Right.
So if we're looking at that last week of September. I don't have a strong feeling between weeknights and weekends. Do other people? Suggestions of dates? That last week of the 28th is a Monday.
I think it would be good, even if it's not highly relevant, to make sure we avoid the Jewish holidays.
28th is Yom
Yom
Kippur.
Kippur, right?
Yeah.
So any
And when
29th,
Rosh Hashanah.
29th.
first is Thursday. Thursdays, all, do we want to think about a Thursday evening Zoom? We're already in that mode anyway, so at least it would be easy for us.
Tracy, do you know how big a Zoom could get and how it would be organized through the town? And maybe we can get some guidance on that.
Meth,
I think, Tracy, somebody needs to go and talk to Sarah Eaton.
okay,
the one
about
in charge
availability. Oh,
of
and
all
here
of
she
this.
is.
There she is.
Yeah,
So
depending on the day is Thursdays are definitely, I know just schedule wise from other committees are very busy. But we're actually nothing's scheduled really that much in September. Hold on, let me just pull up the calendar for that.
When's the town meeting?
End of October.
Yeah.
But, a lot of unknowns. I mean, is it going to be indoors
Yeah.
or not? I mean, that's
Okay.
a big question.
Okay, so what date were you looking at in September? Was it the 24th?
1st of October or the 24th of September.
Okay, yeah, like October, I mean, there's nothing booked yet. And September, there would just be the FinCom, so we could just do this. Well, you guys meet at 5:30, so you could might be done before FinCom, or they could just go over the YouTube channel. So we can run 2 meetings at the same time.
And what about capacity?
So there's 100-seat capacity. And what we're going to be doing September 1st, we're going to be rolling out the webinar platform for it, which if anybody watched last night's selectmen meeting, that was we'll work out the bugs by then. They tested the webinar platform, and what that'll do is it'll allow committee members to be the panelists. And there's a Q&A interface on that. So anybody that's in it, what the Zoom calls an attendee, the people can watch, and we can unmute them if they have questions and they want to talk, or you can do a Q&A feature, or they can also put questions into the chat feature on Zoom. So there's definitely different ways where you can interact with the viewers. And then we can bring them in too if they, wanted to be on camera to like present something or anything like that.
Sarah, not that we necessarily would, but is there the ability to do breakout sessions?
Words from my mouth.
I'm not sure in the webinars there might be. I know you can do breakout rooms in the meeting aspect of platform of Zoom. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more if you can do it on the webinar aspect.
We may not want to. We may want to keep it as simple as possible.
So are all meetings on webinar then once?
Yes, yeah, we're switching over just for more easier flow of things and like a security type of thing. So
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
But Tracy, you and somebody on your committee will have to be the host, and
Okay.
with Sarah, you're going to be the ones controlling the movement of people into the meeting and who can speak and whatever. So it's a fair amount of little management that goes on. So Sarah can probably help.
Hopefully.
yeah, that's definitely what myself or Mia would do is help with the bringing people in and out, unmuting them, things like that. But I don't know. Well, Mev, how do you think it ran last night for selectmen?
It was different. And I think once we figured it out, Kevin's a better person to ask because he was the one who had to, I was just sitting here, not having to do anything, but Kevin had to sort of get through this. So it's more complicated than a regular Zoom meeting. Would you say that's fair to say?
I think at first, but that's why I was on part of it too, other than just my agenda item, was to just kind of help flow through it. But I think once we get it going, it's definitely,
Sorry.
will, because it'll allow, because you have the 100-seat capacity. So by having the committee members as panelists, they're guaranteed a seat in. Because we ran into that problem with the information sessions for the school. It's like the school administrators couldn't get in.
But the other thing that's nice is that the only pictures that show up are the panelists. So, you know, at some point with Zoom meetings, when you get one or too many people's pictures up there, they start leaving your screen and you lose track of who's at the meeting. So keeping it limited to just your faces on the committee and then letting the public in one at a time really is more orderly.
Right.
Thank you.
So if there are 100 people, if we tell people a date, would we have to say, email us and if you're interested, and we'll send you the link? Is that how we would do it?
What I'm going to be doing is the link, and also why we're going to the webinar platform is then I can put the live link up on the committees. You know, if you go to the calendar and you click on for recreation committees and it has your agenda and stuff, in that will also be pasted the live link for people to attend and click on it.
Oh, so it'll be clickable.
Yeah, it's like security wise to prevent any rowdy kids that might be bored and want to cause trouble coming in, and so then that way they're just attendees and they, you know, we have more control that way over that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm inclined to think October 1st, at least for families with school starting later. The 24th seems a little soon. And that also gives us a little more time to get information out. So,
Good.
yeah.
I move that we have our Zoom meeting Thursday, October 1st at 5:30.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Recreation Director's report. Alan emailed this morning that this is his week of vacation, so he's out of town. He said that the summer programs continued, you know, much the same way that they were last month, with full tennis and good participation in the other activities. Those wrapped up last week, and he is still waiting on fall programming guidance. That's still to be determined. So that's it from Alan. That brings us to our August meeting time and date. It is August, September. I didn't update that on the, I didn't update that. So the third week of September, the third Thursday is the 17th. So that's nice too. That gives us a little breathing room between that and the Zoom. So that will be Thursday, September 17th at 5:30. Future agenda items.
I think we're gonna want to have a recap of where we are on the CPC proposals.
I would suggest that we do like a small section on the CPC stuff since it's due in November and focus heavily on the Zoom
Okay.
forum.
Yep. we might have missed this, but maybe I missed the agenda. What are we doing before the town meeting for the funding for the community center? Were we going to try to do something on
I
that?
put that in the agenda. I apologize. Let's go back because I skipped right over that. Outreach for support of warrant article. I wrote next steps, town committee groups to approach for support. I approached the elementary school parents group and the middle school parents group, both of which were eager to help and wondering what the next step was for them. So I think it would be a good idea to generate a list of other groups that we want to reach out to. Sorry for that confusion. I was a little eager.
We can't hear you, Matthew, on mute.
Yeah, excuse me, the warrant article asking for funding to begin the feasibility study for the community center is going to be on the warrant in October. It's the one that got shifted from last spring. And the FinCom has that sort of in its sights as something that's, cuttable. So if you want to advocate for it, I think, expressing the committee's feelings about it to the select board would be useful.
Expressing our committee or other?
No, I think because it was a petition article, it didn't come from the select board.
Right.
And I thought it came from your committee.
Yes, no, I'm just saying, are you saying we should be reaching out to other groups to ask them to support?
No, I haven't done anything. I'm just sort of letting you know that I've seen, people have been creating lists of what kind of things can be cut from our, expenses and budgets going forward, and that is one of them.
In that vein, I would move that the Recreation Advisory Committee submit a letter in support of the citizen petition to fund a community center feasibility study to both the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
I have a question.
Yes, Karen?
Discussion, right?
Yep, we need discussion.
At post survey for the select, because that were one survey results.
Oh,
And I
I'm
think
sorry,
that
Sharon,
in itself carries
Sharon,
some
we
weight.
can't hear you.
Sharon, missed the beginning. Could you repeat it?
I said at some point, are we supposed to present the survey results to the select board? And that was the #1 request in the survey. So I would think that in itself is carrying some weight in regards to what people are looking for in the town. But I'm not sure that we've actually done that, presented it to the select board and said, or even to the FinCom, whoever we need to present it to, say we did the survey and these are the things that people in town are looking for.
Sharon, I would totally echo your sentiments there. I think that the letter itself can lay out some of the survey results while expressing the committee's commitment and desire to see this, petition passed through special town meeting.
But I would be happy if you'd like at the next meeting to see about whether an agenda slot can be made where that survey can be presented, if that's what you want. Okay.
Yes, please.
I think, Kyle, you did such an excellent job about the question of why now. And I think I know the FinCom needs to hear that, as does the select board. And I'm wondering if, in addition to the letter, you could do public speak. You could do it from your home. Are you willing? You did it so very well.
I'm always willing to speak on the issues that I think are important. So absolutely would, I don't want to, edge people out either. If there's other people that want to speak, I would obviously encourage that. I think it's just, I'm passionate about this. You've all heard the speech. I'm not going to reiterate it. But I think it's really important that we put out from not only our committee, but any other committees that are interested, you know, a unified voice and just terms of why it's important. And I think this is another way for the Recreation Advisory Committee to continue to establish their footprint on the town, especially, you know, with the survey. I think, Sharon, that's a great point that you bring up. I think it's great to get onto the Board of Select's, you know, agenda. And these are all really good, you know, ideas, and want to push those.
Okay, so we're still waiting for a second on the motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of sending a letter to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom in support of the warrant article?
Kyle, aye.
Okay. Great. Along with that, other committees that we want to reach out to for support?
Human Services Advisory Committee, I would be more than happy to reach out to Mary Little, the chair there, if she's still the chair. Has been very supportive of the idea, and I have a good contacts with her. So
Tracy, I'll reach out to conservation.
Okay, thank
Also do that, and I'll take a lead on the trail signage. Once you're in the, I'll figure out the connection.
okay.
I can ask Bike Committee. Is there someone we're missing though? Is there any just community members at large we can ask to write some letters on behalf of it?
I'm wondering about Tom Conrad or Elaine Penn, you know, superintendent or principals.
I mean, I think the PTO or A's or however they are now,
Yeah.
I would be.
PG.
I mean, I would suggest that if we have contacts there that they're interested, I think those carry a lot of weight.
Okay. I can reach out. They're small groups.
I will I'll reach out to myself as the chair of the NASA Together We Can coalition or committee to put a letter together too.
I wonder too about the school committees, about the Orleans School Committee and the Regional School Committee. Or at least the the town representatives on the regional committee.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to reach out. I've been emailing them frequently the past few weeks, so they're on my speed dial.
I'm just sitting here listening to this, and in terms of supporting, it'd be good to ask the Orleans Senior Center for support, because if you're trying to get a sort of a broad representation out of the community, and I think they would be supportive.
Can I ask for a repeat on what we're asking for their support of? Just recreation funding in general, or?
There is a citizen's petition to raise, it's written as $75,000 to fund a feasibility study to look into a community center in the town.
Got it. Okay, got it. Thank you. That's the piece I was missing.
Kyle, do you have is that the entire article, or is there something that?
That's the gist of it in the shortened version. I can certainly resend out the petition itself
If
to
you
the
don't mind,
committee so that
would be terrific.
absolutely.
Thank you.
This might be an occasion, I mentioned this to Kyle. I was talking to Jackie Beebe, the town person. She's not a manager, she's
Administrator.
thank you. In Eastham. And she said, oh, who in Orleans is thinking about the community center? And I said, Kyle and our committee. And she said, well, we're very interested in talking about shared amenities and working together with you so that they have a committee to look at tea time, that driving range that ultimately the town bought. And they're looking at that for a recreation center or a community center or a something. And is very interested in starting and keeping a conversation going about shared amenities.
Thank you, Anne. That's helpful to know going forward. I think that gives us a good list to work from between now and the next meeting.
Before we finish up, did we resolve the specifics of emailing and posting and so forth?
I am happy to reach out to Alan again when he's back about using the email list and potentially posting on the website. And then I would think that if we can get it as some sort of postable image, then we could go through so then we could sort of follow the same path that we followed with the survey itself, as far as getting it to, getting it on social media and getting it into the schools it could be distributed through Parent Square. So I can do the Alan part on my own, and then I'll just need from you or Kyle the image.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
I can assist.
Thank you.
And can all of us also just send the email to our Orleans email list, just as a way to send it around and to the senior center and so forth? Yeah.
Once it's put together, I can certainly distribute it amongst the group.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Anne. Terrific. Okay.
Can I just ask Meth a question
Mhm.
about Morgan, Tracy, and myself? Were we reappointed?
Yeah, you were. I saw it happen.
I think so. I was only
Okay.
focusing on Joan getting onto the CPC, but which was done as well. But yes,
Okay.
I think everybody got reappointed
Okay.
because nobody on this committee has any term limit problems.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other future agenda items to then go back again? I think, and did I miss anything else? Does someone want to tell them? Okay, just next time, just wave. Meth.
But the three people that were up for reappointment will have to, believe, get sworn in at some point.
Okay.
And that they do with the town clerk's office.
In person?
Okay.
I don't know how they're doing it. I think you probably show up outside with an appointment and.
Okay.
You just call the town clerk. She says when you're free, you go outside, they give you your papers. It took about 3 minutes.
Okay.
And they're in the office now, so it's really very easy to do.
Okay.
I'm doing
You're
that
tomorrow, right, Carol? Yeah. Okay. Terrific. Okay. Any other future agenda items? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Kyle, aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We all have a busy month ahead with lots of stuff to do for rec. So I look forward to hearing everyone's updates.